In case you haven't heard, it's officially in Abercrombie summer. The A&F Vacation Shop has everything on your packing mood board. I desperately need their new one piece, the A&F Marina. It's strapless, so flattering, and paired with denim shorts will be my go-to beach outfit this summer. Finally, your suitcase isn't complete without finding that dress. You know, the one for the photo shoot. Abercrombie's boho dresses have that perfect beachy, romantic look. Make it an Abercrombie summer. Shop their newest arrivals in-store, online, and in the app.
Hello, and welcome to It's a Fandom Thing. I'm your host, Erin Marlowe, and each week I'm joined by a panel of guests to discuss all things fandom and pop culture, primarily from a female perspective. You'll find everything from fanfic, to cosplay, to Schitt's Creek, to Supernatural, and everything in between. So put on your favorite piece of fandom merch, set aside that fanfic that you're writing about your OTP, and sit back and enjoy this week's episode. Hello, and welcome to It's a Fandom Thing. I'm your host, Erin Marlowe, and on this week's episode, we are officially wrapping up the official part of Comedy Month with something different. We were originally going to talk about news radio, and then that changed because many reasons, a big one being who wants to talk about Joe Rogan in something that we might talk flatteringly about. So that was part of it. The other part was, well, there's only 3 seasons available on Pluto. I don't think either one of us wanted to necessarily rent the rest of them. I mean, we probably could have gotten it. Maybe we could have gotten it at the library. I don't really know. But
yeah, but why?
Yeah, exactly. So I decided we change this up, and I'm titling this Surprise Me With Your Comedy because we're going to surprise each other with one comedy film that we have chosen. And I didn't put this on the outline, but I thought of this just a couple minutes ago. I think we should, before we reveal, because it's going to basically be, we're going to take turns revealing which one it is that we've selected. I'm going to have us guess and see if we can guess who the other, what the person selected. See if we can guess. I know I kind of threw that at you, so if you don't want to do that, that's fine.
I would love to guess, Erin. I would love nothing more than to guess what comedy you want to talk about. I'm very eager for this.
Okay. I have a feeling my guess is going to be too wrong, but never mind. I'll explain why I say too wrong. So first, though, from her brand new podcast, Okay, Real Quick, Carla. Hello, Carla.
Hello, Erin.
Congrats again, your podcast. If people didn't listen to Wednesday's pop culture episode, which please go back and listen to it. But if you didn't check it out yet, Carla, tell everybody real quick. Like the pun there. Tell us what your brand new podcast is about.
Certainly. So sometimes I have things that pop into my head and I'm like, I want to talk to somebody about that. Who do I talk to about that? Myself. This way I can talk to myself, throw it into the void, and maybe somebody else might be like, hey, I've also wondered this, and listen to that. Or sometimes I'm on a podcast as a guest, and there's one little thought string that I want to expand upon, and it's like, hey, Carla, you've talked long enough. Maybe you could stop now. And I'm like, okay. And so I do, but the thought remains. So now I can just throw that out into the void as well in my own podcast called Okay, Real Quick, which is about 10-ish minutes of my mind just doing what it does.
I'm so proud of you and so happy for you because it's a lot. Everybody out there that doesn't have a podcast, we appreciate you listening and taking the time because I know it's like a sea of podcasts, but it's a lot of work. And the biggest hurdle is putting that first episode out. I had a memory come up yesterday, and it was me talking to another person who I forgot we had even talked about doing a podcast together. It never happened. And this was in like 2014.
Oh, wow.
So that's how I've been wanting to do this. So it takes a long time to even get to that point. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's daunting, and I'm so glad that I did it, though.
Yeah, I'm so proud of you. So everybody go check it out. So Carla's going to go first, but I'm going to guess. Now, the reason I say that I'll probably be inaccurate is I'm probably thinking too on the nose here of what I think Carla will pick. And so I was trying to decide between two movies, and I bet it's not going to be either one of these. So I'm going with A Night at the Roxbury just because I know how much you love that movie. But then I'm like, that's probably why Carla won't pick it, because it's so obvious that maybe she's like, I want to talk about something else. So what did you choose, Carla?
I chose Zoolander.
Whoa. I guess that could have been on my list, but I did not. Oh, okay.
Well, it's in the same vein of silliness, but like I think like a couple of steps removed. So yeah, do I guess yours now?
Oh, well, no, yeah, you can guess mine now, and then I'll go back to you, and you can tell me why you chose Zoolander.
Okay, I'll tell you what I will not guess, because it would only serve to delight me if you did, and I don't think that we share a comedy brain. So I know that it won't be Dodgeball. It won't be Eurovision, in part because we've already covered that. It won't be, what was the other one that I was thinking that it definitely wouldn't be? It won't be Spaceballs. So it won't be those three. I think it'll be something perhaps slightly horror. I don't think it'll be Heart Eyes because it's too recent. And I'm leaning towards Totally Killer because it's hilarious and it's horror and it's not that recent.
No, I did not go horror.
Whoa.
I went romantic comedy route, and I selected the 2000 film All Over the Guy. So that's what I selected.
Whoa. I don't even know that I've heard of this one.
You can watch it on Tubi right now, everybody. And yeah, it's a romantic comedy featuring, there's two different love stories, but the main love story is between two men. And we'll get into why I chose this one. I do want to say, though, I do actually really love Spaceballs. I do like Dodgeball. So, but yeah,
So
I decided to go, what?
So you're saying there's hope?
But I did decide to go the romantic route. I was like, you should go a really zany comedy route. And I'm like, no, I didn't even consider horror. That's what's so weird.
Wow.
It didn't even pop into my brain. I was like, no, this is comedy. I'm going to stick with just comedy that doesn't feature any horror in it. And so I just kind of was like, no, and I did not decide because I wasn't sure what I was going to do until like Friday. And I was like, oh, because I'm like, which comedies do I own? Which ones would I want to talk about? And then I was like, oh, this is a movie that probably will never be talked about on this podcast that I've always wanted to talk about. So there.
And, for mine, I went back and forth a lot, too. And it was Saturday morning. We're recording on a Sunday. Saturday morning, I decided because for the most of the week, I was deciding between most of the week. We really figured that we were doing this like on like Wednesday or Thursday. But at some point, I was torn between Zoolander and Dodgeball. And then I was like, well, no, maybe Trading Places. But then I was like, maybe Zoolander or Trading Places. And then I was like, the common thread here is Zoolander. So clearly something in me is desperate to talk about Derek Zoolander. So that's what I went with.
Awesome. So why do you think your brain was going there? Why did you just decide to talk about Zoolander?
Well, first of all, Zoolander has always been one of the movies that I quote very, very often. And the other thing is that recently I was watching a YouTube video on the trajectory of Ben Stiller's career and how he's gone from, doing TV comedy things to movies where he's been tremendously successful to trying drama and people not really wanting to take him seriously, and how he was like very discouraged at one point in his career and decided he didn't want to do anything at all with anything in Hollywood. And then he kind of, started dipping his toes back into just filmmaking through behind the camera. So he's been more on the directing, producing side now. And I think he created and produced the show Severance. So I guess I just really had Ben Stiller in my mind. And Ben Stiller was always one of my favorite actors, just in general. I think he also does great in drama. And one of my favorite movies that he was in is Keeping the Faith. which I guess I could have also gone with, but I didn't. I went with Zoolander because I definitely quote Zoolander more than I quote Keeping the Faith.
I can't even think of quotes from Keeping the Faith. Sorry.
Exactly. It's a great movie, but I can't. It's not exactly like super quotable.
Yeah.
So then you picked yours because you wanted
Mhm.
something light, something comedy.
Yeah, and I wanted to talk about something I didn't think we'd necessarily ever get to on this podcast because this is a very independent movie, very 2000s in like the music and there's like some like David Gray tracks and other things in there that are very, very that time.
I love David Gray.
I do too. I remember discovering David Gray just because like the CD, like I don't remember, I got it for free somehow. And that's how I discovered David Gray. And I remember listening to him over and over again at my desk.
The way that I discovered David Gray, I was at a comedy show. And we were having dinner at the club before, not like at a dance club, at the comedy club, okay? Like, so we're having dinner before the show started, and This Year's Love by David Gray starts playing. And I was like, first of all, what a weird song to play at a comedy place. But I fell in love with it. Yeah. And I actually happened to remember the title. So when I got home and I like went to, it might have even still been Napster that I was getting my music from at that point. But anyway, eventually I bought the CD, the end.
It's a great CD and I still love that song. That song is like, oh, so good. So yeah, that was the big reason I chose this. And I also chose it because this movie, which was directed by Julie Davis and it was written by one of the stars, Dan Bukatinsky, who, if you saw him, he's like been in a lot of supporting roles. And like he even had a little tiny appearance in one of the Friends episodes as a waiter. I remember when that came out, I'm like, oh, that's the guy from Oliver the Guy. And it's a love story between his character and also Richard Riccolo, probably saying that wrong. But he was been in a lot of other little, like you would probably know him around that time. I think he did a lot of like television and stuff. But he plays Tom and Dan plays Eli. And they're set up on a date by their friends, Jackie and Brett, played by Sasha Alexander and Adam Goldberg, which I'm sure everybody knows Adam Goldberg.
I love him.
That does not surprise me.
I
know. And I'm sure a lot of people know Sasha Alexander. If they saw her, they'd know. And Jackie and Brett are these two people. They meet when Jackie is trying to buy a love seat and Brett's attracted to her and he's like he designs furniture. And so she instantly thinks he's gay and he's like, I'm not gay. And then she feels she blew it. And then they're trying to set because Jackie's best friend is Tom. And then Brett's best friend is Eli. And so they're like, let's set our two gay friends up together and, see if they hit it off. And these two don't really hit it off. And I'll get more into that a little bit later. So it's kind of like an enemies to friendship to lovers to kind of story. In a way, there's parts of it when I was rewatching it yesterday that I'm like, this is kind of an homage to When Harry Met Sally in a weird way. So I don't know. I think it's very sweet. I've watched this movie so many times. I own it and I just really love it. And I also just picked it because I think for that time, it was kind of revolutionary in a way. And that's probably too big of a word for this movie, but for the fact that they have a pretty explicit sex scene in here for that time. And also the fact that they have a straight male character. Oh, my thumb went up. That they have a straight male character in here who is best friends with a gay man. And the gay men are the two main characters. But that, to me, you didn't really ever see that. And he's never he doesn't feel like at all, like he never comes off as like gay panic, ever. So, I mean, like he even they have a scene where they're even like dancing together just for fun, like dancing together. And I'm like, this for 2000? That's pretty
big. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was independent. So they probably were, but still, I just really appreciated that. So Carla, for people who don't know what Zoolander is, I'm sure people know the character, but the movie expands the universe of this character. So
Yeah.
Tell us about Mr. Zoolander.
Well, what the movie's about is actually child labor in Malaysia.
That's true.
Because
What a comedy.
I know, right? Because it's absolutely bonkers. And I feel like even I've watched this movie so many times, and I constantly forget that the whole thing hinges on Derek Zoolander being brainwashed into becoming an assassin so that he can kill the Prime Minister of Malaysia, because the fashion industry is concerned that this guy is wiping out child labor and they want to be able to make their garments for cheap. So that's what the whole thing hinges on. It's Derek Zoolander is kind of plucked out of his little ridiculously good-looking life and then kind of brainwashed via the song Relax by Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Because that is his trigger to run down the runway and kill the Prime Minister of Malaysia. It's bonkers. And then you go through this whole thing where it touches on a lot of very big, serious topics. It pays them no mind, though. And frankly, it's a movie that comes across as very disrespectful looking at it now of certain things. Because child labor is certainly not a small thing. It's not like the kids working. But it's such a background thing. It's background noise in the movie. So it's like the right spirit, because clearly it's bad to kill the Prime Minister of Malaysia who's trying to eliminate child labor. So these are clearly the bad guys because they're trying to make Derek Zoolander do this. It's also about family. And it's also about overcoming your self-consciousness. So, but it's also incredibly silly. So don't go into it thinking all of these things that I just said are going to be a major factor in this movie, because they are not. They're just there.
It's true.
Oh God, it cracks me up. I love the movie so much, but yeah, I in a lot of ways it doesn't hold up well. Did you find that All Over the Guy does hold up well?
Yeah, I mean, there are some things, of course, that are dated in it, and it's a very white movie, of course. But I honestly do think, for the most part, it does. You know, it's interesting because there's a scene in this movie, and I was trying to find the exact quote here of what he says, but where Eli and Tom are on their first date, their blind date, and they go to get drinks somewhere, and you later find out Tom is an alcoholic. He comes from an alcoholic family. So there's actually heavy stuff, like his family are alcoholics. One of the mom is played by Joanna Kearns from, Growing Pains. And she's an alcoholic, and then his dad's an alcoholic. And he has a sister that was born with fetal alcohol syndrome. And so it's
oh my God.
There's heavy
so
stuff, but
hilarious.
that's yeah. You see, both of ours have these heavy things, just in there. But there's a scene where during their first date, I was trying to find, why is it not on here, the exact words? And I should have just written them down. But so Eli is telling Tom, he's like, yeah, I was watching In and Out on TV. And Tom's face just changes a little bit. And so he goes on this rant about how he's like, oh, you mean that movie where they just gave us all a Hollywood blowjob about this guy who's so much self-hatred for himself, and oh yeah, we're supposed to just bow down and love that this guy finally comes out of the closet, but he's got so much self-hatred, and then we don't even get blessed with having any kind of sex scene or any kind of love scene in this. It's just this whole long tirade. It's hilarious. And then he gets up and goes to the bar, and Eli says, I'm not even going to bring up Birdcage. And it's just a perfect line, because I think I knew a lot of gay men who thought the way Tom did, and were like, this is all for you straight people. That's these movies are so sanitized. And then there's another scene that calls back to that, because Eli's parents are very open, but they're also too open. They're psychologists, and they have this thing, because there's a lot of flashbacks to each other's childhood, and they have this scene with a feel wheel. So you'd say on the feel wheel how you're feeling, which
yeah.
But there's a scene with Eli as a grown up. He's visiting his parents, and they're, of course, saying inappropriate things that, you're like, oh gosh, stop. You're a little bit too okay with everything in my life kind of thing. And they're sitting there, and then the TV is like, coming up next is In and Out. And the mom's like, this stupid movie. It's like, turn this off. And then she's like, and fuck you to the TV. And it's just so funny because it's like so exaggerated and over the top. And so that stuff does still hold up. And I think for that time, a lot of the stuff they were saying really was kind of ahead of its time. Things that have, I think, gotten a little bit better because this story is told kind of like in flashbacks, and then it goes to present day after, because they've got Tom's character is in an AA meeting, and so he's telling this other guy about how he met Eli, and Eli is waiting to get the results of his HIV test. And so he's telling, played by Doris Roberts, he's telling the receptionist there all about meeting Tom and why he's there to get a test, which is not, that doesn't, I'm not saying Tom is not HIV positive, he doesn't have AIDS, which is also another amazing thing to have a movie in that time period where there isn't a main, that's not what the whole story is about. It's not a tragedy at all. And so they're telling each other's stories and stuff. And so that part, I don't know how well that the way they tell it holds up. There are implications of like Tom getting possibly assaulted, which they kind of gloss over. So that doesn't hold up as well. But I really do think for the most part, even like the language for the most part holds up really well, which I was really kind of pleasantly surprised. Yeah. So I think it holds up well. So I know they kind of gloss over a lot of the heavier stuff in Zoolander because it is actually a really heavy topic. But what do you think about like how they talk about, because Zoolander's a model, right? How they talk about the world of male models, which is a world honestly we don't really see much of. We usually see female, women, female identifying models, not the male side. So,
well, I thought it was an interesting thing to have Ben Stiller play a male model at all, because I think he's very handsome. I just don't think before Zoolander I would have ever said, wow, Ben Stiller should be a model. Like all of the things that male models are supposed to have. He's supposed to be tall, and he's supposed to be like only up to a certain age. And Ben Stiller, at the time that he did this movie, was already like, I think probably well into his 30s. And the man is not tall by any stretch of the imagination. So I thought it was an interesting thing to have Ben Stiller in this world. But I also think that they kind of play a lot into some of the tropes about models in general, that they're not very bright, that they're very malleable, that they're gullible. And some of it they play up for laughs, and some of it they kind of play around it. Because there's one point where the evil syndicate of clothing designers is trying to decide what male model they're going to choose to be their sleeper agent to kill the Prime Minister of Malaysia. I can't believe I'm saying this like so many times in this episode. And they say, the first thing they say is like, what about Fabio? No, he's too smart. He'd never fall for it. And it's that thing of like models are not very bright. But then they also have it where they end up, they end up stopping the plan from happening. And they stop it in a very bumbly kind of way. There's a scene in particular where Owen Wilson plays Hansel, who is the enemy, the professional enemy of Zoolander, because he's new, and he's like, that Hansel is so hot right now, as Mugatu says 5 times in the movie. But he and Derek eventually become friends. And so he goes to Mugatu's office to steal the files about this whole plan. And Christine Taylor, who plays Matilda, the investigative reporter, who's trying to uncover the truth behind Mugatu, she's like over like an intercom, like trying to guide him to find the files. And she says, well, the files are going to be in the computer. I just don't know how he would label them. He's like, they're in the computer? And he's like, all right. So then you cut back to the show where Derek is modeling and about to be activated to kill the Prime Minister of Malaysia, as I keep saying. And then Hansel shows up with the files. But he shows up with the entire iMac.
Yeah.
With the entire computer. And he says, these files are going to bring Mugatu down. And he slams the computer into the ground. Because, and then the thing like breaks free. He's like, where are the files? It's like, you know, they're not doing anything to subvert this expectation of models not being bright. But I think that they're doing it in good fun because they have a lot of models participating in the movie. So I think that they're just doing it as a good time, kind of like, let's run with the joke thing, as opposed to actually saying models are not smart. So Matilda, who is, by the way, played by Ben Stiller's wife, Christine Taylor. So she's in the movie, and at one point she talks about how the reason that she may have had it in for Derek and for models in general is because she was very insecure, because she grew up as the heavy kid and people made fun of her at school. So she always felt like an outsider to the good looking people. And she talks about how, like, at one point, like, and trigger warning for eating disorder, how at one point she was like, you know, I just kept throwing up my food just to try to get skinny. And they're like, yeah, but everybody does it before a show. So like they're playing into that whole thing. And that's one of those things where I'm like, oh my God, bro, like it's not a joke. And yet, okay, so Matilda, she's confessing all this and she says, Hansel says, what? Bulimic. And Derek says, you can read minds? In that scene, I'm like, oh God, I know it's coming, and I know I shouldn't laugh. It's not funny, it's not okay, and inevitably I laugh because I'm an awful, horrible person. But it's just like it's a joke that's delivered well. It's not a good joke; it's just delivered very well. But their approach to modeling for men, I think, what's interesting about it is that they don't put men above women. They don't put male models above female models. They don't say, well, male models are better than female models because they're less catty or they're less, you know, insecure or they have fewer problems. It's like everything that is a stereotype about models is being applied to male models. And they're being played in this movie by two they're objectively good looking people, but you would never really consider them to be actual models. So it's this very heightened silliness because none of the movie makes sense. It doesn't make sense that somebody who looks like Ben Stiller has been the top male model of the world for his entire career. It doesn't make sense that Owen Wilson, who is cute but is not male model cute, is the one who's coming in and taking the throne from him. It doesn't make sense that their way of fighting is to have a runway walk-off where they try to, you know, outdo each other on the runway. I think part of the reason that the movie works is because it's so ridiculous you can't take it seriously. But that got so far away from what you asked.
But it's true. I mean, yeah, because that they are not the people you would think of instantly of like male model. Ben Stiller, Owen Wilson, definitely are the two.
Right. Right. It's so weird. But I also think I didn't watch the sequel because I was like, there's no point. This movie was so perfect in its comedy that I don't understand why you would need a follow-up to it. But yeah, I like that their take on modeling is like, it's a ridiculous field of work. So let's not take it too seriously. But they also brought in people from that world. So it's not like they're just like they're basically joking about it with the consent of the people who are participating in it as their livelihood.
Yeah. So we'll take a quick break. And then when we come back, if Carla has any other questions for me, I do have another question for Carla, so we'll be right back.
Have you ever met a single person in your life that enjoys paying taxes? No, no one does. If you can't sleep at night because you have a huge problem with the IRS, I've got some free advice for you. This service is strictly limited to individuals that owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes. And if you qualify, we can guarantee that you won't be writing a big fat check to the IRS, or our services cost you nothing. The first 100 people that call today will get a free tax consultation worth $500. Stop worrying about your IRS problem. We can help you, we promise. Call the tax doctor right now. I mean right now, to learn more.
800-281-7048. 800-281-7048. 800-281-7048. That's 800-281-7048.
Okay, so we're back. So did you have any other questions for me?
Yes. One thing that I think is interesting is that both of our movies, after a very quick Google, I noticed that they both came out the same year. They're both 2001 films. So, and I think it's kind of interesting that they were around at the same time, like they came out of the same zeitgeist. Like, what was it in the water, so to speak, that would lead to the world producing these two very different movies around the same time?
And I didn't realize that until you just said that. So interesting. And that wasn't planned, of course. So
yeah, it was, see, we do have something in common about movies. We both like early 2000s comedy.
I guess so. You know, I think as far as for this movie, this was during, Will and Grace had already been on for a while. This was right around the same time when Queer as Folk was out. And I think there was kind of like a change in the media and the portrayal of, in particular, gay men. And so I think, and I believe this is what the writer and star was trying to do, was because I think this started as a stage play and then moved to film. But I think it was basically like wanting to be able to see a romantic comedy where the gay men were the main like storyline, because there is a romance, like I said, between the two straight friends, but the main love story is between these two guys, and it's very much romantic comedy tropes. There's so many tropes in this movie. And so I think at that time, like a lot of people were finally like, we need to see more representation in things. And I think that's why this movie came out when it did. But I think the reason it's independent is we need to see more representation, but big studios don't want to see two men having making love to each other, because there is a love scene in here where it's very much making love, these two men making love with each other. And so, they're like, oh, straight audiences aren't ready for this kind of crap bullshit, and seeing two men be intimate, and seeing also that you have two men who, while there are some stereotypes in these characters, I guess you could find, you have like the Tom character is very, 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 and I just mean this in the way you normally see men on screen, but very masculine, like very typical masculine character. He's, they have a scene where they're showing both of them getting ready for their dates. And Eli is very much like, he stands in front of the mirror and changes like 10 different times and 10 different outfits. He's spraying cologne and he's like running through the cologne kind of, And then they're showing Tom, and Tom's just like sitting there smoking a cigarette, drinking. And then he finally gets ready when it's like 5 minutes before he has to leave kind of thing. And then he takes a magazine, and how magazines used to have like the cologne and then puts that on,
Yeah.
So it's like the differences in them getting ready. And then you hear this voiceover of Eli being really nervous about doing this date and not having high expectations, and saying, the one thing I was hoping for is he wouldn't be a smoker. And then you see them sitting there, and Tom, meanwhile, is smoking a cigarette and blows smoke like right towards Eli's face. And so it's very much in that trope of romantic comedies, but it doesn't feel like that trope of like the gay best friend. Because a character like Eli, normally, even though he's not like super flamboyant, like the flamboyant stereotype, that character normally it would have been like the subplot of Eli maybe finding love, maybe like in the end they like, the true straight characters are like at the end go, oh, and by the way, here's my friend Eli. Oh, here's my friend
Right.
Tom. And that would have been what it would have happened. And you would have never really, I don't think, seen like a character like Eli or a character like really Brett, the straight male character in here, have a gay male friend that's his best friend. That was not something you normally would see. Yes, you would see Jackie, the female. You would see, of course, you saw lots of characters like that, Will and Grace and everything like that. So I don't know if this is really answering the question, but I do think it was just that was like a time period where, especially in independent cinema, you had a lot of these kind of movies where it was like these really cute, sweet, romantic comedies. But this was one of the few that actually featured two gay men, and you had it where you could have a love scene in it and it not be played for laughs or not like cut away immediately. They even have a scene where there's an implied blowjob and it's very explicit. That's what's going on. And that also to me seemed very unique for like a romantic comedy set in the early 2000s when, that wouldn't normally happen. But again, I think it's because it was an independent film. As far as Zoolander, I'm going to have you answer that because I don't know how to answer that as far as like,
it's very curious to me. These movies, I mean, they couldn't be more different.
Yeah.
And I think that if they were both released at this point in time, definitely All Over the Guy would be the one to do better commercially than Zoolander. Because I think people would be turned off by a lot of the things that are in Zoolander that, like, I think they don't survive the scrutiny, but I think that they survived the time that they came from because it was created in that time. I don't think that you could put out Zoolander now the way that it exists. I think that they would have to tweak it majorly. But I think that there's more of an appetite today for, first of all, for romantic comedies, because there just aren't as many as there should be. And certainly romantic comedies that don't feature a straight couple. So I think for 2001, it was, first of all, a very weird time, just in general. All Over the Guy was released in May of 2001, and Zoolander, I think it was probably about the same time. But, I mean, so basically what I'm getting at, Zoolander came out after 9/11. The groups of people that made them are about the same age. And I think that the group of people who participated in Zoolander, because you have Will Ferrell and you have Owen Wilson, you have Ben Stiller's dad is in this.
Yeah.
John Voight, like just a whole cast of people who were very, very famous at that point in time and are probably most of them are still famous now. So I think it's one of those things where it's like, when you have that much star power, you can get away with anything, or at least you could back then. I think times have changed significantly now. And I don't know what was in the water in 2001 that leads to these two movies coming out at the same time. But I do think that it's very interesting that they did. There was a lot of pop culture revolution happening, and it was all kind of under the radar. I don't think that a lot of things were being, like, there wasn't like a pop culture war being waged very publicly, but there's definitely a big change that was coming about because you had queer as folk, you had Will and Grace, you had a lot more representation of particularly white male, non-straightness. And I think in a movie like Zoolander, they have a lot of male relationships. Yes, there is the love interest with Christine Taylor's character, but there are a lot of male relationships. And they're ridiculous and they're played for comical effect, but they're still there. You have, Derek, at the very beginning, he's living in a loft with, like, I think it's 3 or 4 other models. And they're, I know exactly what you're thinking. And I'm definitely going there. And they're besties. They're so in sync with each other, in part because they're all models. and they're trying to cheer up Derek because he just humiliated himself by going to the stage to accept a prize that they actually called out Hansel's name for. And he went and he was like, oh, I didn't think that I could win Best Male Model 4 times in a row, but I really showed them. And somebody had to tell him, you didn't win. Anyway, so they're trying to cheer him up. They go and get these smoothies, and then they get into a water fight that becomes a gasoline fight. One of them lights a cigarette. But basically, Derek loses his entire found family. He loses all of them really quickly. And he's also lost his cachet because he humiliated himself. He goes home to be with his family, and his family, like, their mother is dead, so it's just his dad and his brothers. So he's trying to, like, find family again, just find community again. And he gets rejected because he's not like them, because they're all minors. And he tries going to the mines with his family, and it turns out very poorly after the first day. He's like, I think I got the black lung paw, which my husband and I say to each other whenever we get sick. I think I got the black lung paw. And then he gets rejected there, so he comes back. He's all depressed. And yes, there's Matilda, but he's kind of brushing her off at first. And it's not really until they have that moment with Hansel, when they go to him for help, that he finds again, like, his step again in a community with other guys. So I think, like, one thing in this movie that is not really highlighted as much as it maybe should be is that there's a lot of community between guys. And it's not a toxic community other than, blowing each other up with gasoline because he thought it was just funny. It's one of the funniest scenes. I'm sorry, but it's hilarious.
It is hilarious.
But it's a very insular community because not just anybody can be a model, except in this world, apparently, where Ben Stiller and Owen Wilson. But it's a very exclusive community. They all kind of cling to each other because they're the only ones who really know what male models go through. It's other male models. And they come to accept that, instead of fighting against each other, we should just team up and just, be friends, because why not? And that's something that I think is, like, it's actually pretty sweet in the movie. The movie ends with Derek Zoolander Center for Children Who Want to Learn to Read Good and Learn to Do Other Stuff Good Too. Which is, at that point, not a center for ants, because it is actually to scale and not just a model. But then, like, rounding the corner is Hansel with a group of kids, and he and Derek are like, okay, I'll see you at the teacher's lounge. So they've taken their friendship even further. And I think it's really lovely that they go from rivals to friends. And I think, honestly, I don't know, because I don't look for fanfic for most things, but, I imagine that there's fanfic shipping Derek and Hansel, because frankly, for me, it would make more sense for those two to end up having romantic feelings for each other than for Derek and Matilda. That just, to me, is like, well, there's a woman in this, so you're going to have to marry her and have a kid.
I'm so going to go and look for this fanfic.
Oh my God, I need to know if people out there are shipping them, because I feel like, where I was mentally in 2001, I don't think that I think the idea of gay couples existing publicly, it wasn't, like, abhorrent, but it certainly wasn't common. So I don't think that I would have even in my mind have thought that they could be a ship. Not that I wouldn't have shipped them, just that I don't think that it could have been a thing. It's like, people will ship Mulder and Scully, but the automatic assumption isn't that you're going to ship Mulder and Skinner, which is not true, because there's plenty of Mulder and Skinner fanfic out there. But in my mind, like, that's not where my mind would have gone. Whereas now there's a potential in shipping of any, consenting adult characters. To me, it's interesting where my mind was at that point in time versus where it is now, where if both Zoolander and All Over the Guy came out at the same time, I definitely would be more interested in seeing All Over the Guy than I would be in Zoolander. Even though Zoolander is historically one of my favorite movies, I don't know that it would be if it had just come out.
Yeah, that's a good point. Did want to ask you, because I'm always curious about this with you, because a lot of the comedies that you choose for your favorite comedies, not all of them, have a theme of that they have Will Ferrell in them. And I know we've talked about this before where you said, well, Will Ferrell is not one of my favorites. And I know it's blasphemy, but you don't like Elf. Oh,
I
gosh.
don't.
Which is one of my go-tos. Watch it every year. If you want to hear Erin A. and I talk about it for Patreon, become a Patreon supporter. I went to a movie party last year for it. It was so much fun with Erin A. and everything. We got little elf hats and they had
So
fake
cute.
snowballs. And, there were lots of kids there. They had like a contest before it started where people were wrapping presents in teams and 21. It was really cute. But I know you've said that it's not Will Ferrell, but is there a part, why is it that there seems to be this running theme of like so many of your favorites have Will Ferrell in them?
It's a really, really good question. Because, yeah, like, okay, you have A Night at the Roxbury, you have Eurovision, Zoolander. Like, why is Will Ferrell popping up so much in my favorite pieces of pop culture? And I think, honestly, it's because Will Ferrell is often underestimated as an actor. He has obviously he's very good in comedy, but I think he also has the chops for drama. And I think that there's more to him than just a funny guy from SNL. There's some scenes where, not in Zoolander, but in Eurovision and in A Night at the Roxbury, where you see traces of that, where there's like some grounded humanity in those characters. Because, and I've always said this about A Night at the Roxbury, the movie is about brothers. It's about their relationship with each other. And it's about how you navigate life when you kind of start drifting apart, when one of you starts growing in a way that maybe your sibling isn't. And there's like a point that is so ridiculous where Steve, played by Will Ferrell, is getting married to Molly Shannon's character, and then Chris Kattan's character shows up with a boombox and starts blasting "What Is Love" by Hathaway. And it's such a dumb thing. It's such a ridiculous moment. But it makes me a little bit emotional because it's like he's reminding his brother, like, you are your own person. Emily is turning you into somebody so different from who you actually are. Remember who you are. And that to me is beautiful. Anyway, the point being, there are a lot of moments in both of those movies, not in Zoolander though, where there is a bit of like actual real humanity built into those characters that I think is great. So I guess I'm saying that Will Ferrell is a good actor, and that's why I apparently gravitate to so many of his damn movies.
Do you like Step Brothers?
I haven't watched that one. I did watch Anchorman, and I do enjoy Anchorman, though.
I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on Step Brothers.
I keep like, people who like comedy tell me that it's great. Some people love it, some people absolutely hate it, but most people I know really, really like it at the very least.
I actually really like that one, and I think a lot of that reason is because of
John C. Reilly.
Thank you. I love John C. Reilly so much, and so a lot of that's that, but also Adam Scott. Adam Scott is so funny and has one of the most hilarious scenes in there with Catherine Hahn, and so funny with the song Sweet Child of Mine. And it's, oh my gosh, anybody who's seen that knows what scene I'm talking about. But so I'd just be curious, though, your thoughts on that one if you ever saw it, just because of the Will Ferrell of it.
If I end up watching this, Erin, and it ends up being like one of my top movies, I'm going to be so mad. Because like I think I have enough. Like, this is enough Will Ferrell. I can't believe, like, how dare you call me out on the abundance of Will Ferrell movies in my
I just always find it interesting. I just have always found it interesting.
I swear, like, it's not like I'm gravitating towards the man. It's just he just happens to be in the movies that I like. I did have a crush on him for a while. I will say that.
That
he
tracks.
Yeah, I know. Basically, like, what's a weird looking guy who's kind of funny? Okay, Carla, here's your man.
That's why when you said I love Adam Goldberg, I'm like, that tracks. When I was rewatching it yesterday, I'm like, when I tell Carla that he's in this, I know Carla's going to say, "Oh, I really like him."
You know me entirely too well. Like when I was watching the TV show The Equalizer with Queen Latifah, he's 50% of the reason I kept watching it, even though it just basically devolved. I was like, hey, you've gotten hotter. Yep. That's me.
I'm not surprised. That's why I was like, hey, it'll be one of the selling points. Christina Ricci is also in this movie. I keep forgetting
Which
to
is another
mention.
selling point. Yes.
Very young Christina Ricci. So, of course, because the time period. And Lisa Kudrow is in it for about 2 minutes. She's like in the opening, but I think they kind of were using her star power at that time to help sell this independent movie. Same with Christina Ricci, frankly. So, but who's in it a lot more than Lisa Kudrow. Lisa Kudrow basically has one scene that's playing up the persona of like the Phoebe character and also the character she played on Mad About You, Ursula. Yeah, playing up that kind of the persona that she was known for at that time. So
obviously I'm going to have to go watch this movie.
It's on Tubi. And there's really not that many commercial breaks for this one.
Oh, well, see, like, you're just hitting me with all the right reasons.
Okay, we are going to take another quick break. And then I do want to just like maybe either have one other question or talk about like maybe some other scenes that we didn't get to mention or something. So we'll be right back.
Lowe's knows that no matter your paint or stain project, saving is at the top of your to-do list. Save now with buy one, get one half off select paints, stains, and primers from top brands like Valspar, HGTV Home by Sherwin-Williams, and Cabot via Visa gift card rebate. Find more Memorial Day deals now at Lowe's. We help, you save. Selection varies by location. While supplies last. Discount taken at time of purchase. See sales associate for details. Offer valid 5/15 through 5/28.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. From streaming to shopping, Prime helps you get more out of your passions. So whether you're a fan of true crime or prefer a nail-biting novel from time to time, with services like Prime Video, Amazon Music, and fast free delivery, Prime makes it easy to get more out of whatever you're into or getting into. Visit Amazon.com/Prime to learn more.
Okay, so I didn't necessarily have any other questions except for just wanting to know if there are any other scenes you want to talk about or anything else you wanted to mention that you haven't mentioned yet about Zoolander.
Okay, well, before we do that, I want to ask you,
Okay.
aside from the scenes that you've mentioned, what is a scene that in this movie that you liked because, not necessarily because of the relationship between the characters, but because of the characters themselves, like something where they're revealing something about themselves as people?
Oh, that's a really good question. So the character of Eli, he loves the X-Files, by the way.
I love him more now.
So the character of Eli is in this pursuit to find, like he goes to a lot of antique, like, I don't know, like not like antique garage sale kind of things. I don't know. And he's in the search for a Cornelius doll from the Planet of the Apes movie. He is obsessed with this movie. And it's just, to me, it's such an interesting character detail because, I don't know, it's like he's kind of a geek in a way. And I mean that as a compliment and kind of like into fandom stuff. But he's not portrayed as like this like nerdy kind of guy. I mean, he also writes the police blotters for LA for like the crime blotters for like the newspaper. And it's just, I don't know. It's a funny thing about his character too, but that just struck me so much in this movie, especially rewatching it, of how important that is. Cause he has a poster of Planet of the Apes I think it's in his bedroom or somewhere. And so every once in a while you'll see it. And it's just such a huge part of him. And then he has like a row of like dolls, like from there, and then also still in there, like their, original packaging. And this is a huge spoiler, so I don't know if Carla even wants to hear this part. But
it's a 24-year-old movie. I think I'll survive.
So he's trying to find this Cornelius doll, and him and Tom are like, have this back and forth. They become really good friends, but there's always this sexual undercurrent there. And they have this bit of a fight, and Tom goes home and he gets on the computer, and this is when we had dial-up, so you hear the dial-up tone, which was perfect. He goes to an antique trader website and he searches for this doll. And then there's a moment in here where he's trying to get Eli to talk to him, and so he goes and he leaves the doll at his doorstep. And Eli is this very, he's also this very, he's always like, oh, people aren't speaking the correct grammar. It's driving me nuts. I can't, Tom is always saying, you do the math. And Eli hates that. And it's just like these kind of annoying little things. And so anyway, so Tom leaves that. And then you see the next scene, there's a knock on the door and you think, oh, it's Tom knocking on Eli's door. But no, Eli ordered a pizza and he looks down and he sees the package. He opens it. And then he goes to Tom's house and he's like, I can't believe you found this. It's like so touching to him. It's like because it's very much, Tom is very much like all about sex and not intimacy. And he's afraid of intimacy. He's kind of like a more evolved, don't let this turn you off, Carla, but he's kind of like a more evolved version of Brian, but he's way more, he's way more, he's a teacher. He's so he's a little bit more sensitive and everything. So then Tom's like, yeah, I even took him out of the packaging so you could play with him. And Eli's like, wait, it came in the original packaging? And what'd you do with it? And Tom's like, oh, I threw it away, because Tom isn't in the same realm of, no, you're supposed to keep that to keep the value. And Eli, it's the first time you see him stop himself, because you can tell inside he's like, what the fuck? You got rid of the packaging. And Tom's like, why? And he's like, oh, it's nothing. It's okay. It's nothing. And then they end up making love. And it's a very sweet, tender scene. And I really enjoyed it. And you hear David Gray playing right when it's about to start. So there's a couple times when David Gray is playing in here. I believe it's the David Gray song that plays in that part. So, but I just think that was a very interesting character thing, because it played a lot into their love story, the evolution of their love story. And also just the fact that it gave a different kind of slant to this character who can appear very buttoned up, Eli. And I think it's kind of a way for him not be as buttoned up, that and also the X-Files thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's really cool.
I'm like a sucker for their love scenes in this movie. I like literally their final love scene, which I'm not going to reveal, but is so sweet to me in this way that I mean, it's very much tropey, but I rewound it yesterday when I was watching it for this. I was like, am I going to rewind this like I do every time I watch this movie? And I did. So, yeah. So then, Carla, are there any other scenes or anything else you want to?
Yeah, I'm just going to, the towards the end, when Derek is about to commit prime minister side, he's being held back, and because at this point he has come out of his spell, and Mugatu's basically arguing with Hansel, who has just dropped the computer and to reveal the files that are now broken because he broke the computer. But Mugatu still has to uphold his obligation to the evil clothing syndicate. I don't know what they have a formal name, but that's what I'm calling them, of killing the prime minister of Malaysia so that he doesn't get in the way of their access to child labor. So he throws this like a throwing star. He throws it at the prime minister, but basically he's shouting about how Derek is useless. He's not even that great. He has the one look that he recycles over and over again. It's like Blue Steel, a Tigre, Ferrari. They're all the same look. And Derek becomes incensed at this. And everything else happens. And Mugatu throws the star at the prime minister. And Derek gets up and says, one look? Everything else is happening. And he's about to kill this guy. And the one thing that Derek is obsessed about is that, how dare you? How dare you? I've worked so hard in my career to have all of these different amazing looks. And so he steps onto the runway, faces the throwing star, and busts out Magnum, the look that he has been working on for years. And it is exactly the same thing as Blue Steel and the Tigre and Ferrari, but they have special effects where it's like all glory around it. And everybody's like, whoa, it's so beautiful. And the throwing star stops right in front of Derek's face and just drops to the floor because it's so powerful. And that's how he saves the Prime Minister of Malaysia.
Because of
know.
course.
Yeah, naturally. And I know that I'm revealing a lot about this movie, but again, it is not a deep film. It's not like you're going to watch this movie and be like, oh, Carla revealed too much. Like, it's a dumb movie. It's hilarious, though. But it's not a very deep, anything. There's such little depth in it. It's like, walking on a hard volcanic rock surface. You can't even like sink in a little bit. So I want to hear some lines. Tell me some of your favorite lines.
I'm glad you said that because I want to read this whole exchange, okay? Just
Yes,
because
please.
It's hilarious. So Tom and Eli are at a store. The setup for this is they're at a store trying to pick out some like gifts for Jackie for her spoilers for her bridal shower. And so Tom talks first and then it's Eli. So Tom's like, Jackie would love this bear. Fuzzy Wuzzy was a bear. Fuzzy Wuzzy had no hair. Fuzzy Wuzzy wasn't very fuzzy. Was he? Was he? Was he? Was he? Was he? Eli, was he? Was he? Was he? Tom, that's what I said. No, you said, was he? It's was he. And Tom's like, what's the difference? You're kidding, right? You just established that Fuzzy Wuzzy had no hair. Why would you then ask, was he? Like a question? Like you don't know if he was fuzzy or not.
Oh my God.
And then Tom, it is a question. I'm asking if fuzzy is or isn't fuzzy. What is so wrong about that? And Eli, it is a rhetorical question. It's supposed to be ironic. Fuzzy Wuzzy wasn't very fuzzy. Was he? And then they leave the store and they're driving in the car and they're silent. And Eli is like, what? To Tom. And Tom's like, I just don't get how it is so rhetorical that Fuzzy Wuzzy was. So they're still talking about it. It's just the fact that it's one of those things that actually happens in real life where it is the most ridiculous argument to be having.
Yeah.
And Eli is so frustrated. And then the fact that then Tom becomes frustrated and he's still hanging on to it, that they're driving in the car and he's still like, I don't understand why you would say this. So that's what I wanted to
It's pretty amazing. Unfortunately, I think that 2001 me would have related entirely too hard to Eli. It would have been like, yeah, why do people do that? Oh my God. Oh, I don't know how I had friends back then. Jeez.
Ouch. Oh, man. So I do want to ask you really quickly because I have to bring this up because I have to. So Billy Zane has a very famous appearance
Yes.
as himself. He plays himself. Billy Zane loves that fact that he loved that he did this. He loves that people come up and talk to him about this more than a lot of other things.
Wow.
That and Demon Knight are the two that he gets talked to, I think. Well, of course, Titanic. But so do you like Billy Zane as Billy Zane?
I do. I thought, oh my God, he was so fun in this. It's the scene where, and naturally he's the one who's like, it's going to be a walk-off. It's going to be a walk-off. And basically like introducing people to the fact that this is going to happen. But before that, he and Derek run into each other and they're just chatting. And then Hansel comes in and he and Derek start butting heads and having words. And Billy Zane walks up right behind Derek Zoolander and like stands there like, this is my boy. I'm going to like watch what you say around him because I will absolutely jump into the fray if I have to. And I just thought that was like such a cool, weird thing to have Billy Zane just do. Just like stand behind Derek Zoolander like, I got you, bro. And that is like during one of my favorite lines of the entire movie where the whole reason that they start getting into this fight is because Derek is rubbing it in Hansel's face that Hansel didn't book Mugatu's new line called Derelict. And Hansel says, you can derelict my balls, Capitan. And I say you can dare lick my balls all the time. All the time. I've probably said it on this podcast like 5 times because I say it constantly. But yeah, and then Billy Zane jumping in there and being very hot and Billy Zane about the whole thing. It was fantastic. It was so good.
And they let Billy Zane they didn't put him in a wig. It's one of my biggest frustrations is Billy Zane does not need to have
he does not. I mean, there are so many hot bald men. Bald man. Not just one. There are many. There are men. Hot bald men out there. And I think that it helped that they had Tyson Beckford, who also was always clean shaven. It's like you have Billy Zane and Tyson Beckford. Hot bald men.
Yeah, that was when we did our Billy Zane episode, both Paula and I are like, petition to stop putting Billy Zane in horrible wigs all the time. Because a lot of times they look horrible on him. And
they look so fake.
Yeah, he doesn't need it. You don't have to do that. That's why I love, like, in Demon Knight, he doesn't have that. And in Zoolander and a few other things. But usually people put him in these wigs and I'm like,
it's so senseless. He doesn't need a wig to act. He doesn't need a wig to be another character. He's very talented and very hot. So, that also helps. Yeah. Maybe like if you absolutely must cover his head, like there are hats.
Yeah. They did that in Demon Knight. Didn't he wear a hat in one part of that? No, maybe I'm wrong about that. I don't know. I just love it. I don't know, when he's going on his little rant, when he's in the cowboy gear and he's just talking about how stupid cowboys are or something like that. His whole thing, it's hilarious.
It's so funny. Oh my gosh. I'm so glad that I ended up watching that movie because it's so silly and it's hilarious. He's great in it.
He is, yeah. And I love the fact that he embraces how big of a fandom there is around that. Mm-hmm. And, he goes to conventions and stuff like that. And there's a great clip of a convention he went to in Scotland. And he's up on stage and people are asking questions. And of course, a lot of questions about Titanic and then some about Demon Knight and a few other things. And at the end, everybody's giving him applause. And then he turns and he's like, he talks to the audience. He's like, now I want everybody to give the same applause to the person who was hosting it and asking the questions because this is a hard job. So let's all give her an applause too.
Oh my
Something
God.
along those lines. I know. And I'm like, now I just love you more, Billy Zane.
Yes. Damn it. I'm already in love with you. What are you doing to me?
Plus, he's just so weird. He is so weird. I don't mean that as a compliment, but if you follow him on Instagram, he's very artsy too. He's an artist as well. He does a lot of like repurposed art is what he calls it. So he basically recycling a lot of stuff and using it in the art, including paint and stuff like that, which is kind of cool.
That's cool. Yeah.
And I'm so excited that we get a release date for the Waltzing with Brando because I've heard the movie's not necessarily that great, but that he is fantastic in it as Marlon Brando. So
yeah, well, I believe that. I mean, there's so many actors who are so good, and then they're just in things that are not good, but they're great in it.
And that's true for most of Billy Zane's career, to be honest. Because Billy Zane has made more stinkers than not. And we talked about that in that episode, that a lot of that was because of, California's a no-fault state. And when he got divorced from his wife, they went off the assets he had at that time, which wasn't actually accurate. So then he had to take basically any role they gave him. So, and he's like, I'm not at all angry at my ex-wife, lovely person. That's just the way it happened. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically the lesson is if you're an actor, don't get married in California. Got it.
Yeah. That's the lesson.
If you learn nothing else about this in this episode, everybody, at least take that lesson to heart.
Yeah. On that note of our marriage advice, which is not legal advice, not legally binding.
We're not lawyers.
Yeah.
We don't even play them on TV.
We could if we wanted to.
I mean, honestly.
Yeah. I used to want to be a lawyer.
See? That's right. You could have combined your love for pop culture and lawyering by being a TV lawyer. Yes.
Yeah, well, the only reason I wanted to be a lawyer was to be able to give those big grand speeches in a courtroom. And growing up around lawyers, because my mom worked in an immigration law firm when I grew up, and everybody there's like, that's not what we do. The majority of what we do. And I'm like, well, but that's because you're in this kind of field of law. And they're like, no, the majority of what most lawyers do is not standing in a courtroom and giving a big impassioned speech.
That sounds fake. And I don't think that you should let people dim your dreams, Erin.
Okay, well, we are going to turn to 6 Degrees of Finn. And after I gave you a hard time, did you play?
No, because I completely forgot about it.
I was like, watch her play this time. Just because I gave her a hard time. So I was like, I decided not to think too hard on this one. This one was actually pretty easy. And a lot of it came from the fact that I was recently rewatching Dawson's Creek. And Dawson's Creek was obsessed with inappropriate age difference relationships. I don't know what it was about that show. It wasn't just Pacey and his teacher, but there was a relationship that Dawson had with Pacey's older sister, played by Sasha Alexander. She was in college, so I think they were like, oh, that's okay. He's a junior in high school. No, senior in high school. Senior in high school, so it's fine. He's over 21, but it's okay. Which, no, that wasn't really appropriate. And plus, she looked so much older than James Van Der Beek. They were, I don't know. I don't remember how old what the age difference was. I looked it up, but now I can't remember. But anyway, so she was in Dawson's Creek. Also in Dawson's Creek was Jensen Ackles and his very annoying hair. I hated his hair. Rewatching it, I'm like, this is some bad hair. It's so bad. I also could have used Joshua Jackson because, Dr. Odyssey, Ryan Murphy, that whole thing.
Yeah.
But instead, I'm just using Jensen Ackles because I want to use Jensen Ackles.
I mean, honestly, fair.
Yeah. But Jensen Ackles, of course, got his start on Days of Our Lives, playing Eric Brady. And also on Days are a bunch of people that also were on All My Children. And Finn Wittrock also got his start on All My Children. It's funny because I didn't really become as big of a Finn fan. Say that 20 times fast. Until American Horror Story time period. But I watched All My Children when he was on there because I've gone back and watched the clips and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember this character. Jensen was different because he was one half of one of my favorite ships, Eric and Nicole, which, spoilers, Eric and Nicole are together now. They're in Paris. They're not on the show. This is a different person a different person was playing Eric though. So, but the same person, Ari Zucker, played Nicole throughout. She is probably most famously known because she was the subject of that disgusting Access Hollywood video that came out in 2016 election. That was her. Yeah, that was her he was talking about on the bus. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I watched Days then and Jensen. That's how long I've loved Jensen, is from those days. The days on Days. It's so funny because I never wanted to say this when I was in the supernatural fandom because I thought it would stoke too many of the conspiracy theories. But I swear to this day, and I can't find any proof anywhere. So this is one of those things that's like what is that called? When you have you think something happened, but it didn't really.
Oh, the Mandela effect?
Thank you. Yes. I swear Jensen Ackles left Days of Our Lives because he wanted them to make Eric gay. Because Jensen Ackles was coming out of the closet. And I swear I remember this so vividly.
I've heard that somewhere.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh yeah, he came out of the closet. And then when I started watching Supernatural, I'm like, oh, this is so cool that he's doing this. And and same thing when I would watch Dawson's Creek, and then I saw these pictures of him with his wife, and I'm like, wait a minute. Wait, didn't he come out? Wasn't that part of the reason he left Days? Because they wouldn't do what he wanted them to do? Isn't that part of the reason? In actuality, the reason he left Days, a big reason, is because Deidre Hall, who's like one of those queens of daytime, plays Marlena Evans. She told him, she said, she said, don't stay in this business. You can do so much more than this business. You are so good. Because he was offered a renewal of his contract, which was a huge thing for soap. And it was a huge, long renewal. I think it was like 5 years or something.
Wow.
And something like that. I could be wrong about the length. And Deidre Hall said, no, you don't want to do this. And so he listened to her and left. And that's why he left the soap opera.
That's wild.
I know.
That is
I know.
wild.
Yeah. So we have Deidre Hall to thank. For Supernatural, for Jensen Ackles' career.
Who would have, because like, first of all, I fully believe that I heard the thing about him coming out. Yeah, like I'm pretty sure, if nothing else, I'm like 90% sure that I heard somewhere about him wanting his character to come out. So yeah, like I know I've heard something somewhere.
Yeah, thank you, because I remember it so distinctly because I was watching Days. And it was in the early 2000s, and I believe the early 2000s, something like that. And I remember, oh my gosh, wow. And I got so mad at Days of Our Lives because I'm like, and actually, Days of Our Lives has quite a few. They have a few gay men. They have one character who is Ace, not Ace, Pan, which I was like, holy crap. I can't believe they have a Pan character on a daytime soap opera, and it's not a white woman. It is a Black woman. Granted, she's married now to a man, but that doesn't matter because she still acknowledges that part of her. She had a threesome, which I couldn't believe they had a threesome on the show. I was like, wow, that's amazing.
Different times.
Yeah. So, and Days has always kind of usually has had representation LGBTQIA plus. I mean, soaps have always been kind of, ahead of their time. Sorry that this is such a tangent, everybody. All I had to say, I really did think Jensen was coming out, or at least he wanted Eric to come out. But instead, Eric left, and then Eric came back, and Eric was a priest for a while. But he had lustful thoughts for Nicole. He still wanted Nicole. And then they got kidnapped and were held together. And they admitted their love for each other.
Wow. That is so soap. So very soap.
So very soap, yes. So anyway, on that note, I still watch Days, everybody. Yep. You can watch it on Peacock. They finally switched their writers over, so it's getting a little bit better.
Oh, good.
Anyway, so Carla, thank you for joining me. This was fun. So if you want to tell everybody again where they can find your new podcast, okay, real quick.
Thank you. You can find Okay Real Quick wherever you found this podcast. Except for maybe Pandora, we don't know yet. Why don't you go and find out and you let me know? You can look for our social media, wherever you social your media, look for at Okay Real Quick Pod. You can also find me, my art and my musings on Instagram and TikTok at Carla Temis or my website, carlatemis.com. That's CarlaTemis.com.
Awesome. Thank you. And Fergie the dog does not give a crap about this movie, but either one of these movies. Not really her cup of tea. But she loves horror, she loves true crime, and she loves Abbott Elementary. And you can follow her on TikTok at Schroeder and Fergs. That's SCHROEDERANDFERGS. It's long, but it's worth it. To find all our past episodes, links to our social media, we're also on Blue Sky too. Go to our website. It's a fandomthingpod.com. And also you can find a link to our Patreon page and also our Redbubble store under the Support Us tab. And if you become a Patreon supporter today for as little as $3 a month, you can get ad-free content. You get episodes a day early. You get bonus episodes. You occasionally can win prizes. Like I still have to notify all of my Patreon supporters. But like on our recent marathon streaming event, we gave away some prizes to some of our Patreon supporters. So become a Patreon supporter today for lots of great bonus stuff. And on next week's episode, I thought it'd be funny to put this episode in Comedy Month, even though this is not a comedy show. But we are going to talk about The Bear. This was my first time watching it. I just, spoilers, I love this show so damn much. I love it so much. It's not a comedy, but I love everything about this show. There's some heavy stuff. So, of course, we're going to have trigger warnings for lots of stuff for that one. But that's what we're going to be talking about next week with my podcast brain twin, Jen, from my streaming bubble. And also, of course, our monthly podcast, Twin It, Twin It. And then Sarah. So that is next week. And then after that, we are going to kick off Pride Month. And yeah, so I will be letting you know that lineup next week. So until next time, remember, it's a fandom thing. Black Lives Matter, stop Asian hate, and free Palestine.
It's true that some things change as we get older. But if you're a woman over 40 and you're dealing with insomnia, brain fog, moodiness, and weight gain, you don't have to accept it as just another part of aging. And with MIDI Health, you can get help and stop pushing through it alone. The experts at MIDI understand that all these symptoms can be connected to the hormonal changes that happen around menopause, and MIDI can help you feel more like yourself again. Many healthcare providers aren't trained to treat or even recognize menopause symptoms. MIDI clinicians are menopause experts. They're dedicated to providing safe, effective, FDA-approved solutions for dozens of hormonal symptoms, not just hot flashes. Most importantly, they're covered by insurance. 91% of MIDI patients get relief from symptoms within just 2 months. You deserve to feel great. Book your virtual visit today at joinmidi.com. That's joinmidi.com.